Hey everybody, so I want to do my labor and delivery discussion talk thing because I keep wanting to talk about it and I don't want to do it in a normal update. So basically I'm going to remember what my labor was like with Sophie and tell you guys how now, getting close to 2 years later, how I feel about it and my expectations and hopes for this, my upcoming labor and delivery. So basically with Sophia, I've tried recording this vlog already and I ended up just going into the whole spiel about what happened, which is not what I wanted to do, so I'm going to try it again. But with Sophia, just a loose background with her is that I developed a severe preeclampsia early on, along with some issues with my kidneys not functioning correctly, and my liver started not failing, but it was definitely going a little weird and not filtering correctly and things like that. So I was having medical issues with her, and that was after having a very healthy pregnancy, so it kind of came out of the blue and it developed early, and so far with this one I've had none of that, so that's really good. But so anyways, that's what was happening with Sophia, is I just medically was getting sick. So basically the consensus was reached by my doctor, who she did not want to do this either. She was like, oh, she did not want to have me induced. But she was like, we're going to have to get that baby out. And so originally when I first started having problems, they were really worried because not only was I having problems, but Sophia was actually having cord flow issues in my uterus, so that's not good at all. So they were kind of like, eee! But that fortunately kind of leveled out, so they weren't as immediately worried about her, but they were worried about me and the preeclampsia and developing into eclampsia and seizures and all of that stuff. So the doctor basically was like, okay, we got to get this baby out. I had to go to the doctor twice a week up until I had her because they just needed to monitor me a lot. And I was scheduled to go in to be induced at 36 weeks and 6 days that night. So basically I would end up having her at 37 weeks. Exactly like on the nose. And I did have her on that day, but it wasn't exactly as we expected. So basically I had her on a Tuesday, I checked into the hospital on a Monday. That weekend I went into labor, but I didn't know I was in labor. I was in very early labor. I suspected something was up, but I'd been having such crazy Braxton Hicks with her that when they became contractions, the early contractions that weren't that painful, I didn't realize what was happening. I would have figured it out, but I didn't know at the time. So I kept telling people, I was like, I think I may be having contractions, but I'm not sure. So I just kind of went about my business. Kyle and I, got ready. I tried to see you guys know me, I try to see the bright side. So I was very disappointed because I did not want to be induced because that increases your risk of having a C-section, which I was adamantly fearful of and did not want. And, I did not want Pitocin, and I was just very like, there was things I did not want. Because my labor plan with Sophie was, I wanted to go in and be as natural as possible, but I was going to have an epidural. So I'm not even going to lie to you guys. That was my plan with her. It was like, nothing but an epidural. Like, I want the epidural, but I don't want any of the other stuff. So that was my plan with her, and I just didn't want it to get messed up. But basically, we went in that night, 36 weeks, and they put me on the baby heart rate monitor and my contraction monitor. They left to do their thing, and the nurse came back in a while later and said, how long have you been in labor? How long have you been contracting? And I was just like, and I looked at Kyle and I was like, I told you I thought I might be having be in labor, and he was just like, oh. So anyway, it turns out I was in labor, regular. I think my contractions were 6 to 7 minutes apart. They were very regular. And so they went ahead and inserted the pill to soften. I wasn't dilated one bit, not one bit. And they went ahead and they were like, well, we're going to go and start the induction process. She's like, we're just going to put in a pill to help soften your cervix. It doesn't really help you dilate, really. It just softens your cervix and hopes that it will. And she's like, we're going to do that, and then you go to sleep, and we'll come back and we'll put another one in like 4 hours or something like that. So that happened. I was kind of excited. They were kind of getting a little uncomfortable, my contractions at that point, but nothing horrible. Well, that next morning I woke up and I realized that like no one would ever come back in to put in another pill. And they said the reason why was because every time I was having a contraction, the baby's heart rate was, one, going down low, but also my contractions were increasing on their own. So they were like, we don't really think we need to, push you along. It seems like your body's just doing what it wants to do naturally. So they checked me and I still wasn't dilated, and my cervix wasn't even that soft, really. Like, it wasn't that great. So that first pill hadn't even really done anything. But that was okay because my body was doing what it needed to do. So anyway, I'm not going to go into more whatever about every little detail because I've discussed it before. And one thing I wanted to note was that when I did start to dilate, I was dilating very slowly at first, and it hurt the pain was intense. And that was one thing no one had told me. Actually, I'd only ever been told the opposite, which was that it starts off and it doesn't hurt that bad, which is kind of what happened to me over the weekend. But that, like, when you're dilating early on, it hurts, but it's not horrible. And that as you dilate more, the pain is worse. But with me, the contractions and the pain I felt when I was dilated to like a 3 hurt just as bad as when I was dilated to an 8. I just had a little bit more time in between them. And so they were hurting so bad that I was like, man, am I just a wuss, about this? Like, why is this hurting so bad? But then I found out later on that it's because my body was working so quickly that I was having the same kind of intensity pain that I was having early on. It's totally normal. And I was not a baby. It really hurt as bad as it said. And if you watch the contraction monitor, I mean, it would just be like, bam, just high level chart topping contraction, even though I was early. My hospital won't do an epidural until you're a 5 or a 6 because they don't want to stall out your labor, which is awesome because I've heard that some hospitals will let you have them earlier, and that can actually, could stall out your labor. So my hospital's pretty cool about that. They were like, no, just hang in there, honey, What can we do to help? Do you want to get in the shower? Do you want to take a walk? Do you want to get on the ball? My hospital has a lot of also natural birthing techniques and things that you can even order. Like, I could have ordered a massage if I wanted to, like a in-labor massage, and they had like aromatherapy and all this stuff that you could just literally, there was a menu and you could be like, please help, I need this. It was really cool. So the hospital I'm at's very pro things being as natural as possible, and they actually pride themselves on having less C-sections than other hospitals. Like, that's their thing, is that they don't want it to be a C-section. So I really like my hospital a lot because you always hear these scary stories about the doctors rushing, trying to rush you to have the baby and rushing you into a C-section and rushing to put you on the Pitocin and all this stuff, and that just wasn't happening for me, thank the Lord. They were just really cool about it. The only thing I didn't like about the whole thing was that the nurse came in and said, she was like, I can give you this medicine through an IV that will help you sleep. She's like, it's not going to take away the pain of the contractions, you're still going to feel the contractions, you'll wake up when you have a contraction, but it'll help you sleep in between them. So I was like, okay, I guess that sounds good, So I got put on that. I did not like that stuff, you guys, because it basically would knock me out in between my contractions, but then as soon as I had a contraction, I would just be wide awake and in pain. So it was kind of like, what was the point of taking this drug? It did nothing. While I was on that drug, though, I felt my water break, and it was just like just like in the movies, like it was gushing. It was just like, whew, like I just felt all this warmth and just so much liquid, just so much, and I could just tell I was just soaked, and I was like trying to tell Kyle and my mom, who were in the room, that my water broke, but I was so in that twilighty, sleepy stage that I was like, my water broke, my water broke. Like, I kept saying it. I said it so many times and nobody heard me, and I don't know, maybe I wasn't actually saying it out loud, but I kind of like pushed myself out of my like haze, and I was like, my water broke, and I just kind of kept my eyes closed. My mom was like, oh, so she like came over to look, and I felt her lift up my gown, and then she just kind of stood there, and then she was like, Kyle, and then I heard Kyle come over, and I was keeping my eyes closed, and like I heard Kyle standing there, and then my mom said something like, go get the nurse, just like that, and Kyle like ran out of the room, and I was kind of like, what the heck? So I was like, man, there must be water everywhere. So the nurse came back in, and then the nurse was like, oh no, and that's when things got a little crazy, because as it turns out, it wasn't water, it was blood. Yeah, I had just had a geyser of blood just come out of my body, like so much of it. Like I said, I thought my water broke. It was everywhere, and it really scared my mom and Kyle and the nurses. It even scared the nurses. So this that was definitely when things got a little crazy. The nurse was like, ooh, so they were, needless to say, other nurses rushed in. They actually gave me a shot or something to stop the contractions because they were worried. They were like, oh my gosh, she's totally going to hemorrhage or something's wrong. And they were really cool about it, but I was like, what, blood? And then I was just like, take me off that medicine. It's just, the nurse was like, okay, and she did. And anyway, so that medicine fortunately was gone, which is good because I just didn't like being all twilighty. And anyway, the doctor came and they were like, the bleeding stopped, and you know, they, to this day, we're not exactly sure what happened. When you dilate really quickly, you can bleed a lot, but I bled more than even that normally would. So I was just having some blood loss issues, but anyway, it kind of leveled out. After they kind of cleaned everything up, they checked and I dilated to like a 5.5 or something, and so I was able to get the epidural, and so I got the epidural, and it worked really well. I was completely numb. I couldn't even lift my legs. I could still feel the contractions, but they didn't. It took the pain away, or most of the pain away. And I actually have video while I'm on the epidural. I'm trying to like fix my makeup, but needless to say, I was like trying to because I looked so tired, and then I was like, and I give up. Like in the video, I'm like, forget it. I don't care enough to fix it. But then my epidural only worked for about 15-20 minutes tops. We always say 20 minutes, but it wasn't even that long. And it was really literally about 15 minutes. And what happened was, all of a sudden I could move my toes, and then I could move my ankles, and then I could move my legs, and I could move my whole, I could lift everything up. And I was like, I started to panic a little. I was just like, guys, I can feel everything. I can feel my feet. I can move my legs. Someone come and help me, you know, like get the nurse. And then it wore off up top, and I could feel every contraction, and I was like, what the heck? What happened to my epidural? And needless to say, what ended up happening was that it came out of my back. That's rare, but that's what happened. So the medicine was like leaking down my back instead of into my spine like it should. But the nurse came in and she was like, oh, she was like looking, she was like, oh, I can't fix this, you know. And then they checked me and they were like, you were fully dilated. I had gone from like a 5.5 to 10 in like 20 minutes, you guys. And they were like, honey, there is no time for an epidural. They were like, we can't re-put this in. Sorry. And I was just like, you know. And so I think that's one of the most significant moments of my life was when I realized that I had not ever mentally prepared myself to have a natural birth, and that I was going to have one. And then I pretty much, except for those 15 minutes or so of the epidural working, you know, been feeling everything. And so I was kind of like, well, so, you know, I had that momentary fear, but I took it, and I always tell people to try to describe it. I squelched it down. Like I just swallowed everything I had. I just took any of those fears and thoughts and everything, and I just pushed it down deep inside of me and said, all right, let's do this. Let's have this baby. And I didn't look back, you know. I just was like I can do it, you know. I just, you know what I mean? I just did it. And so it ended up being wonderful. I got Sophie out in 7 pushes, and that included practice pushes. One important thing I could recommend to people is that if you are pushing correctly, it'll probably hurt more. If you are holding back, if you're not pushing correctly, if you're tensing up, it takes the edge of the, you know, it won't hurt quite as bad, and it's natural to want to do that, to want to tense up. But the more you open yourself up to that pain, just open yourself up to it, you'll push more correctly and more efficiently, and you'll have that baby out sooner. And you know, and also you'll get her out without, you know, being tense, so you're more open, so help with tearing and things like that. So that was really important for me. That was an important lesson that I'm going to take into this next pregnancy. And so anyway, got her out, had some scary moments during it. Her heart rate dropped so low. It was down to between 30 and 40. Yeah, you heard me right. It was that low. You hear people who are like, oh, my baby's heart rate dropped to 90. And I'm like, yeah, mine dropped to like 35. Like, it was bad. And one of the nurses was like, honey, we got to get this baby out. And I knew she wasn't saying C-section or anything like that, but I knew what she was thinking. And she was trying to give me the encouragement I needed to get her out on my own. And it worked. And I did tear naturally. I tore naturally. And then once I tore, the doctor went ahead and gave me an episiotomy, because if you tear, it's harder to stitch it up. It's harder to stitch up a jagged cut, but if they cut it, you know, they cut you so you have a smooth line, it's easier to stitch it up, to help heal. So I did get an episiotomy, but it wasn't until after I was already tearing naturally, and then the doctor just kind of helped it out. And yep, I felt it because I had nothing down there to numb it, but it was real quick pain. I remember it. It was just kind of almost like a burning. Just this quick burning pain, and then everything else overpowered it. So it wasn't the end of the world. And yeah, Sophie came out. And then the big thing I get, it actually started to get kind of annoying because I've answered it so many times, which was, you know, people who are like, the baby should be placed on top of you once she comes out. Why wasn't the baby placed on top of you? Blah, 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 blah. Yes, the baby was supposed to be placed on top of me when she was born. However, she wasn't really breathing much at all, and I had lost so much blood that both her and I needed a little bit of attention before we, you know, I don't think I could have held her, honestly. I was so shaky from the adrenaline and just weak that I just, in that moment, all I wanted was for them to just fix her. So, and basically with her, what had happened is the cord was wrapped around her neck, which is common, but it was wrapped so tightly that they literally had to like pry it off. And then in addition, she had swallowed a bunch of fluid and things, which is also normal. However, because her airway was so blocked, she wasn't able to cry or cough it up on her own. Right when she came out, the pressure didn't push it out like it normally does when you have you know, a vaginal birth. Actually, the pushing them out helps push the fluid out of their lungs, and she didn't have that benefit. So basically, you know, they took her over and you know, got her okay, and they had to take out so much stuff out of her lungs. But as soon as they did, she started coughing and crying, and she was fine. She just needed a little bit of help. And then with me, they just needed to make sure I wasn't going to keep bleeding. They were trying to get out my placenta, and they were worried, you know, because I had bled so much, like what had happened, and you know, so anyway, so that was that. And that was what happened. And then I got my baby, and she was fine, and I was fine. And people always ask why I was shaking so much, and it was from the adrenaline. You know, just it's natural to shake that much. You can ask any midwife, doula, doctor, they'll tell you it's very common. You just had a crazy experience, like you're shaky, you're like, whoa, what just happened? And after I had her, it was the most amazing feeling. I was like, wow, look at what I totally just did. And Kyle, who's, you know, my biggest supporter, even he was like, man, I didn't know if you were going to be able to do that. And he didn't mean it in a bad way. He just was like, I'm so proud of you. I can't believe it. He goes, when they said that epidural wasn't going to work, he's like, I was just like, oh no. He goes, but you did it. And so, yeah, very proud of myself. Ended up being wonderful. So I would say my experience with Sophie, her whole labor and delivery, was wonderful. I just loved the whole experience, even the crazy stuff that happened. I think I had a great labor and delivery with her. And, you know, I couldn't have asked, with the medical issues I had coming into the labor and delivery, could not have asked for it to go better. You know, I didn't have to have Pitocin. I didn't have to have, you know, other things done. I mean, it was just really great. And I felt like a champ. So basically for Grayson's, I just hope that it's similar. I still don't want any Pitocin. I obviously don't want a C-section. I mean, who does? But you know what I'm saying. And obviously for medical reasons, if things happen, if they're like, your labor's, you know, you broke your water 2 days ago, your labor's not progressing, it's either take some Pitocin or go have a C-section, of course I'll take the Pitocin. I just mean, you know, in general, ideally, I would have none of that. So that's my ideal. And as far as the epidural goes, I'm not sure. I'm undecided. I know now that I can do it without it, and so anyone can. It's completely possible. It's wonderful, and let me tell you, as soon as you get the baby out, the pain goes away. So it's really cool. It's like amazing how quickly it just goes away. Obviously you're sore. I don't mean like all pain goes away, but the contraction pain just stops. It's awesome. So but I'm not sure. I don't want to say I'm not going to have one, because I might. You know, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I might want one, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so that's my hopes for him, is that it goes, I don't know. And with Sophie, once I went into active labor, it was very quick. And actually the nurses and the doctor and everybody teased me about, okay, when you have another baby, you better get here quick when you go into labor because it's going to happen fast, because my active labor was just so quick. So anyway, so I'm very curious. I wonder what's going to happen with him, you know? Like, what, is it going to be that quick? Is it going to just be the opposite? I just hope I have as good an experience, because even with some of the crazy stuff that happened or the stuff that wasn't as positive, it was just a brilliant experience. Like, I don't know, it was the coolest thing I've ever done. And that sounds so cliche, but there's a reason people say that, you know? And that's one of those things that's why I just, you know, always pray so hard that everybody who dreams of experiencing this gets to, because I think they should. And I don't know. So we can just hope. We can hope that my next one is as memorable and amazing as Sophie's was. And hopefully, you know, with him, you know, he'll be a little better, do a little better than she did, and I will do a little better, and he can go right on top of me. And I did with Sophie, as soon as they fixed her up and I got her in my arms, I didn't let her go for a while, and we nursed right away, and she had trouble latching on because she was little, you know, it was hard, but we figured it out, and it was amazing. So yeah, there we go. That's my remembrance. That's how I feel this far along, you know, about Sophia's birth. To this day, it was just, it's positive, and then, you know, excited. So that helps me be excited, and hopefully it makes you excited too if you are getting close to your labor and delivery, or thinking about it, or you're scared. Is that even in the crazy situations, like it's all in your head, you know? You just open yourself up to the experience, and everything goes a lot better. And when you're done, you're just like, wow, that was awesome. That's how I felt. I was like, that was crazy. I told Kyle, that was the craziest thing I've ever done. And it was. It still is. I'm about to do it again. So clearly it was fine if I'm willing to do it again. Alright, bye guys.